Alright, we are back to go over the artifacts and the lands. This is TCGplayer.com's set review of Shadows of Innistrad. I'm Conley, hosting you through a brew-centered set review, talking about deck ideas, talking about cards, impacts, and standard. If a new deck is going to possibly pop up to play some of these cards, if existing decks are going to incorporate these cards, keep in mind that so much of standard is rotating, two major sets rotating, that a lot of the decks that we know of and love are, or maybe you don't love them, maybe you may be sick of them, but a lot of the decks we know of are losing key components that will kind of reshape them. So Abzan decks just probably aren't the same without Abzan Charm and Anafenza and Siege Rhino and whatnot. So even though there might be a black, white, green, or a black, green / white or whatever deck that is Abzan like, it will likely be so new that it's difficult to just say, this card goes into Abzan, because that's kind of misleading, because Abzan is not going to be the same. So moving on to artifacts, we start off with a juicy one right here, Brain in a Jar. One of the cooler pieces of art, I would guess, in the set. Very sci-fi, obviously, but it's still very cool. So this is kind of a Aether Vial, obviously, that is hitting instants and sorceries, which is really interesting. You have to pay a mana up front, so eventually you're going to spend enough mana on charge counters that you could have paid for your instant or sorcery if you had done so in increments, but you don't get to do that. So this lets you, Aether Vial up, putting counters on this, casting instants and sorceries. So I wanted to look at what instants and sorceries we have right now in the format. Obviously, again, there are new ones coming out. Because one of the things I did want to, one of the things I want to do as we go through is kind of do some, like, not necessarily full out brewing, but do some sort of live brewing, come up with some concepts, come up with some ideas, and see see where we can land. Brain in the Jar is kind of one of these interesting cards. So I guess before I do this, let me finish the card. So you get to Aether Vial up for 1 mana a turn, on instants and sorceries, and then you can pay 3 tap, remove X cards from or X counters from it to scry X, which is not a very powerful ability, but the important thing is that it resets the number of counters on the card. So Aether Vial, when you put your 4th counter on it, your 3-drop creatures always had to be cast from there on out. You were never going to get that 4th counter off and back down to 3. Brain in a Jar comes with a built-in way around that, although again, I'll note that the ability itself is kind of mana intensive, and removing counters and stuff to scry for a small amount is not necessarily the most powerful thing in the world. That's not necessarily why the ability's in there. It's that the card continue working throughout the entire game, which is nice. So just looking at, you have this birthing pod effect. This Aether Vial and birthing pod kind of have similar play styles. Where you want to go up the chain. So if you're playing this card, you want some number of 1-drops in your deck. You want some number of 2-drops. Is there any way to sort by cost? Bam. So just like doing a quick browse through here. Obviously, we don't need to get into every card. I like the 1 mana +2/+2 card that puts a 1/1 if you have an equipment into play. I think that's a solid 1-drop. Obviously, Fiery Impulse is probably the best 1-drops you could be doing with this. Endurance is okay, I suppose. Outnumber is a good one. Titan Strength certainly fine, although that's a weird deck to be playing Brain in a Jar and Titan Strength. I don't know what you have going on there. Expedite's fine just because it draws your card. Anything like that you can kind of get away with. Dispel is good just because you can activate this anytime. So you can wait till your opponent casts a spell and then activate it, casting Dispel. You can wait till your opponent goes kill your guy, activate it, casting Unnatural Endurance, etc. So keep that in mind. All good things. You can also cast a card, a sorcery, at instant speed with this. So you may cast an instant or sorcery card with mana cost equal to the number of charge counters on Brain in a Jar from your hand without paying its mana cost. I think, pretty sure you can do that on your opponent's turn with a sorcery. So that, maybe I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure that's correct though. If not, write in to your senator, tell them to fire me, because I don't know the rules of Magic the Gathering. What am I doing? Moving on to 2-drops, you have some kind of free rolls. Again, anything that draws a card is kind of free. Hallowed Moonlight being a good one right now. in Constructor for that. Warping Wheel is another really good one, I think. Kind of in that vein. We have Horribly Rye, which I've been enjoying a lot in Constructed. Anticipate's a very good one, just a freebie. Grasp of Darkness has been seeing all kinds of play. Silumgar's still around, apparently. Is that true? Apparently that's true. Next out of the 4 sets. Alright. I thought that was in... No, that makes sense. It's in Dragons. Okay. What else do we have? Anything? Oh, yeah. Tarkus Command's a good one. Jamoka's Command's a good one. So, yeah, definitely some solid 2-drops. And again, I'm not even looking at the new set, which I'm sure has plenty of options here. Things start to get a little more slim pickings as you get to 3s and 4s and whatnot, of course. Anything? I guess there's just a bunch of counter spells. I mean, I'm fine casting like any of these cards. Complete Disregard, solid. Ooh, Foul Tongue Invocation's a good one, I guess. Kozilek's Return's in there. That's a solid one. Pulse of Marasa is a good one. This works pretty well with something like Goblin Dark Dwellers, where you just get like a value deck where you're Colligan's commanding and you're pulsing with this, and then you're getting those things back with the Goblin Dark Dwellers later on. And where you kind of stop with this is up to you. Like 4s, you're obviously going to want some 4s in your deck for this. Collecting Company is a good one. More counter magic. Ajutai's Command is really strong. Brutal Expulsion is probably pretty strong. And then maybe you want a 5 or 2, but the thing is you don't really need to go up much higher than that because 6 drops are just when you draw them in the late game you probably just end up casting them. You're probably going to reset your number of counters on your Brain in a Jar before you get to 6. And if you look at 6, you're kind of slim picking it anyway. Like the entire format has 2 6-drops. Is it true? I guess 3. The entire format has 3 6-drops you can cast in it, and like 2 7-drops, some X spells which don't work. 5 again. 5's fine. You got Silumgar Scorn. Although I just don't know if you want to go this high. Like if you're playing the Dragon deck, which is potentially the deck that you're building around this, like the Dragon control deck, because you just get a lot of really good cards. You get to play Silumgar Scorn, you get to play Foul Tongue Invocation, you get to play a bunch of cool draw spells, counter spells, gain life spells, everything. Then maybe you have a Dragon Lord's Prerogative or 2 in your deck, and like that's your 6-drop, and that's cool. Do you enjoy it? All right, Cryptograph Stone. I love this card. Not much to talk about. Keep in mind that this is a Spellwar Stone that provides you a mana you want instead of a mana you can have, which is awesome. But this does not work if you have no graveyard, and it does not work if you have only colorless cards in your graveyard, or colorless cards, I guess, just, lands and whatnot. So you need to have a deck that can reliably get something in your graveyard for this to work. But if you can do that, if you're playing 1 mana cantrips or discard spells or even a bunch of creatures or whatever, this card is awesome. It's a 2-drop Signet effect, which we just don't have in Standard right now. It really enables something like Ramp. It's if you can go turn 1 Oath of Nissa, turn 2 Corrupted Graphstone, turn 3 Oath of Nissa, putting the other Oath of Nissa in the yard, and then you can tap this for a green, you are like golden. Like you're already set. Like that's awesome. But, not every deck will be able to do that. Not every deck has that type of card flow to get a card in the graveyard that early. But just tapping for any color mana or whatever color mana you might need is just awesome. Being a 2-mana ramp spell, awesome. This again will not be super heavily played. It's not Pentad Prism or not Pentad Prism. What am I saying? Prophetic Prism. Is that what I'm thinking of? No, that's cantrips. I don't even know the card I'm thinking of. Let's move on. All right, Epitaph Golem. Blah. If you really want to play a Thraben Pureblood with upside, enjoy. If you really want to play a Shock with downside, enjoy. What is this? That is alright, whatever. Hana Cloak is probably playable. I couldn't, it's one of those equipment that works in that equipment deck as a one-of. It's something that, I don't actually want multiple copies of this because its ability does not stack. So when I put a card like this in my deck, I'm taking a big risk where drawing the second one of these means I need to have a second creature in play that cares about Vigilance and Trample because Haste also doesn't stack beyond the first turn. So I just get really sad when I draw a second one of these. With Open the Armory, I'm not really taking advantage of these notes. Hopefully I'll use the notes a little bit better in the future. But Open the Armory, grabbing a 1-of Haunted Cloak in your deck is pretty interesting because, 3 mana up front is a bummer. but 1 mana equip cost is cheap as heck, and Vigilance, Trample, Haste, all very relevant abilities. You know, not the most impressive card, but it has uses, and you know, it's got a green swirl. This card, I want to like it. You know, I guess you could talk about it for a second, but 3 mana, producing a colorless mana, yeah, fine. 4 mana to investigate is like, that's saying 6 tap to draw a card, which, you know, it is a mana producing tome, to some degree. Like 6 mana tome is a lot to tome, so maybe this is good enough in control. Maybe you just want, you know, you have a lot of mana in the late game. You're just like, draw me cards for 6 mana. But I don't know. I can't see this seeing much play outside of like the slowest, grindiest control deck. Maybe you're the Clue Matters deck, but even then, 4 mana to investigate just so much. So this card is insane and limited, I'm sure. Taken unlimited and crush. And it probably is good in 1 or 2 control decks in standard, but it is very, very slow and very, very niche as a result, I think. Yeah, I mean, maybe it works in Eldrazi in the ramp decks. I could be wrong there. Like, they lose a lot of ramp stuff, and this produces colorless mana, which is nice, and it draws cards for a ramp deck, which is something. All right, Murderous Axe. This is an equipment we're talking about, although I don't think it goes into the equipment-based deck. The reason this card is we're talking about is because of Madness specifically. It is a free discard a card enabler that also gives you a relevant bonus. +2/+2 moving around for free is quite strong if you can set up for that. And yeah, this just enables your Madness. It fills up your graveyard. It's an artifact for if it does go to your graveyard itself. There isn't much to say here without seeing the rest of the set, but once we start getting to some Madness cards, this card's going to come up quite a bit. Probably carry these notes over, so I'll start making notes for the future since these artifacts matter. But yeah, again, I don't think this really goes in here. Maybe you play as a one-off just because it has a free equip cost. Free, quote. Cool. All right. Runaway Carriage. I love this card. All right, so the flavor on this card is insane. The card's just like super fun to look at. It's super fun to think about. I don't know if it's constructed playable, but I don't really care. So 4 mana, 5/6 trample, legit stats. Then we have the very flavorful text that when it attacks or blocks, you sacrifice it in a combat. Somebody, you know, you pull the brakes on the carriage, you pull the wedge from under the wheel of the carriage, and it goes taken off, and it's donezo's. Super interesting card. 4 mana, 5/6 is giant. So you know, if you really want to use this as like maybe a defensive option, like if I put this out there against your mid-range deck, and I threaten to block something, and you're not willing to make that attack, and I like buy a couple turns where you're just not willing to, because the block with this is not just threaten to block with something, it's threaten to block and kill it. So if I put this out there and you're just not willing to make that trade, and I buy some time because of how intimidating this is, that's pretty awesome. And then eventually, when you finally do make the attack, I do get to kill your creature. Maybe that's good enough. I don't know. Maybe it's strong enough in an aggressive deck, and you're just getting in for 5 damage trample. I'm not sure. I don't think any of those things are true, just because it doesn't do enough in the way of that. But there's enough stats here for a cheap enough cost that I would not be surprised if this ended up seeing some play sometime. No, don't do it. There are better ways to fill up your graveyard. I like this effect. I don't know if this is that good though. Skulk is interesting, but 2 mana equip cost. If this had a 1 mana equip cost, I'd be more turned on by it. But 2 mana equip cost to turn your guy into a looter effectively is just meh. Like Skulk doesn't even work on most creatures that well. Here's a card I was talking about earlier in reference to this style deck, just because it does work with humans and stuff. It's just 3 casting costs and 3 equip is so much mana to spend in this that unless you are playing Kazul's Toll Collector, I don't think you get away with it. The downside of playing Toll Collector, this of course it is not a human, so you'll not get the +1/+, or you don't get the 1/1 flyer effect. You will get +4/+2, which might be good enough. I'm not certain, probably not. But this is a card I want to like. But the guy, this is just the Stern dude that we talked about earlier, just wearing a bunch of like spiky armors. He's just back. He was a 1/1 before, and then now he's dying into a 1/1 spirit. But he put on the +4/+2 spiky armor thing, so that's cool. Tabios Journal, sweet art. Jace here finding the journal We've got the entry 4/3/4. There's more to Abyssin's Madness. I bet you it's Emrakul. At the beginning of your upkeep, investigate. So at the beginning of your upkeep, you get a delayed 2-mana draw card. That's fine. And then we have tap, sacrifice 3 clues, search your deck for a card, put it in your hand. So tap, sacrifice 3 clues, demonic tutor. So this is important for a couple of reasons. One, it lets you turn your clues into a manaless card advantage. Yes, it takes 3 clues to do that, which is either 3 turns with Journal or 3 other effects. But the fact that you don't no longer need to spend mana to actually draw the card from it is pretty important. Second of all, obviously a tutor is significantly better than just drawing a card, although I do think the default functionality for this will just be to spend 2 mana over and over again drawing cards, because you can do that instant speed, which means you can leave open your counter magic, your removal spells, your whatever, and then, you know, fit in your 2 mana draw cards whenever you want, effectively think twice whenever you want. So I think that this card is very interesting. It's legendary, so you probably won't see too much of it, but it's like a 1-of, 2-of in control decks, especially in control mirrors. I feel like this would be a really important card. If you have this out for a couple turns, it's just like you have a Planeswalker out. Like, you're just crushing with card advantage and, you know, potentially even tutoring. So, all in all, really cool card. Not really a build around. Again, you can build around this because of the clue clause. It's a really strange sentence to say. All right, the clue clause on Tabios Journal lets you build around it to a certain degree, because if I do have a bunch of clues out on turn 5, I cast this, tap it, sacrifice 3 clues, go grab my blah, whatever blah is. But at the same time, I don't know if that payoff is worth including a bunch of like subpar clue builders. So I think that by building around this, you might make 1 or 2 choices, like 1 or 2 extra clue cards in your deck. But I doubt that you will build a whole deck around clues just to play this. Still a very cool card. All right, we're moving down. We got True Fate Sensor. That is not good. Moving down again. We got the Wicker Witch. That is not good. Moving down. Look at this. This is straight out of Nightmare Before Christmas. I love it. It just looks like straight out of Nightmare Before Christmas. Wild Chill Scarecrow, I'll talk about briefly. 1/4 defender for 3 is playable, not great. But this guy is card advantage. He does sacrifice later on to go grab 2 basic lands out of your deck, which is quite relevant. I don't imagine this will be a big player, but the basic lands work for your Shadowlands, which it lets them be untapped, which we'll get to in a second. But more importantly, he just keeps you having a flow of cards that you can, you know, discard to loot, you can make your land drops, you can do other things with. So I thought he was worth mentioning. Doesn't do anything flashy. Probably be a sideboard card, if that. But he has purpose, and he's angry, and he's in the wild field. So that's all I got to say about him. All right, let's quickly move to the land cards. Most of the land cards are the same thing, and that's the Shadowlands. So we got Choked Estuary, Foreboding Ruins, Fortified Village, Game Trail, which is easily the best name by far, and Port Town, which is the worst name by far. I think that's all. Yeah. So those 5 cards make up the new. Wait, I guess there was actually a white-green one, isn't there? No, there's not. Okay. Well, there is, but I already went over it. So those 5 lands make up the Shadowlands. Don't call them anything else. Let's not start this debate again. Shadowlands works fine. These will all be huge player and constructed. They work with the battle lands. The battle lands have 2 land types on them, so that you can reveal a battle land to this and it will untap it. Of course, a battle land will not come into play untapped unless you have 2 basics in addition to this, but that makes it kind of work in a trio of ways where your Shadowlands and your battle lands, once you be playing basics, your Shadowlands work with your battle lands. Your battle lands kind of just do their own thing. But mana bases are going to get worse with the loss of fetch lands. But they will not be bad by any means. Like, these guys will step in, fill the roles pretty well, and in some cases they'll just be straight up better for certain decks, not having life loss in their deck anymore, especially decks that didn't care about delve or whatnot. You know, these are a cycle of lands you should definitely pick up for standard. They shouldn't be too expensive, I imagine. They're only rare. But yeah, they're gonna be everywhere. So be ready for them. All right, Drown Your Temple. I love this type of card because again, it provides you an effect in the graveyard. So when we throw when we use all this stuff, all this graveyard synergy stuff, whether we're milling or discarding stuff to Jace, like just imagine I tap Jace on turn 2, I discarded Drown Your Temple, or on turn 3, excuse me, I discarded Drown Your Temple. But okay, let me reset the stage. I've played a turn 2 Jace. I have untapped on my turn 3, played my third land, and passed the turn. I now have 3 mana and a Jace. You play a spell, maybe I counter it, maybe I kill your creature, do whatever. If you don't play a spell, maybe I activate my Jace, discarding Drown Your Temple, and then pay 3 mana to return from the graveyard to the battlefield. You know what that means? That means that I spent my turn 3 looting and ramping myself while keeping the option open of countering your thing and doing whatever. You can't play lands on your opponent's turn. That is a fact. You can, however, put lands into play via like a Harrow or whatever. And so this ability works at instant speed, and it works, it's just awesome effect for 3 mana. So obviously your deck needs to either have a reason for colorless mana or to not be hurt by it, so you can't be playing like 4-color craziness. But assuming you can get around the obstacle of being a colorless mana and you have any graveyard synergies, this card's awesome. Like I could just do something dumb like discard, play a turn 3. Where is he? I don't even know where he is. There's a 2/3 that each player discards a card. I guess I didn't include him in this list. I don't know why. He's over here. Simek Icebreakers. Even if I just do this on turn 3 and I'm discarding Drown Your Temple, not only am I effectively not discarding a card, but then I get to use Drown Your Temple's ability as a ramp mechanic, when normally it would just be a normal land drop. So just a really, really cool card. I think that, it will have a bunch of different purpose, and a lot of times it'll just be used as pure value upside. But one of my favorite cards in the set. We'll see if I can do anything crazy with it. I just want to discard it to Oath of Jace and whatnot, and just get value. That's all I'm trying to do. Moving down, we have these tap lands that are lame and good and only limited. And then we should have one more card. This one, again, not the most exciting card for constructed, but it is a land that goes to the graveyard, which could matter for your Delirium. It also is a Terramorphing Expanse that produces the mana the turn it comes out, which is pretty important for the Eldrazi decks that need colorless mana. This allows that while still being a mana fixer later on in the game. Not too fancy, but definitely playable, and a budget card at that. Common, good and limited. Weird art, as usual. So yeah, that is where we are at for today. That was the white cards, the artifact cards, and the land cards from Shadows over Innistrad. We're going to be back tomorrow, probably with the blue and the red cards. No, the blue and the black cards, probably. And then I'll probably do green and red on Thursday, and then Friday I'll wrap it up probably with the double face cards, the multicolor cards, and a top 8. And as I say, expect more lists to come along the way. Definitely check out the text accompaniment of this, where I kind of break down some of the main points that I made audibly, just to in note form, just whatever. Also, if there's any deck lists or starter lists you want, you might be able to find them over there. So definitely check it out on TCGplayer.com. I am Conley Woods. This has been day 1 of our Shadows over Innistrad brew review, the first of its kind. Hopefully you are enjoying it, and I'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully you will as well. Everyone have a good night. TCGplayer.com.